Imagine a figure so colossal in history that he essentially, he built the administrative framework of a major world religion from scratch.
From the ground up.
He conquered superpowers, set up justice systems, and literally shaped the map of the Middle East as we know it.
And yet his legacy is split right down the middle.
Completely. To half the world, he is Al-Faruq, the ultimate hero, the one who distinguishes truth from falsehood.
And to the other half, he's the villain of the story, the usurper who broke the prophet's family and derailed the entire spiritual path of Islam.
Today, we are not just talking about history, we're talking about the man who serves as the definitive wedge between Sunni and Shia Islam, Umar ibn al-Khattab.
It is almost impossible to overstate the polarization here.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about a difference of opinion on, tax policy.
Right.
We're talking about two completely different realities. You really cannot understand the modern Middle East, or Islamic theology for that matter, without grappling with Umar.
And the stack of sources we're looking at today is, let's just say it's complicated.
Complicated is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. It is a messy stack.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at classical Sunni collections like Bukhari and Muslim, which they view him through a lens of absolute reference.
Right.
Then you have the Shia historical narratives, like Kitab Sulam ibn Qays, which paint a completely different, much, much darker picture.
And then we're layering on modern academic analysis to try and find some kind of historical baseline.
If that's even possible.
That's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to try to peel back the layers of legend and theology to understand the man, the personality that could build an empire.
But we also have to look directly at the specific controversies that fractured the community.
And just a disclaimer right up front, we are not here to take a side. We're reporting what the sources say. We're going to present the defense.
And the critique for every major event.
Exactly. We're looking at the evidence, the conflicting narratives, and trying to see what picture emerges when you overlay them.
And honestly, the picture starts with a personality that is, quite frankly, terrifying.
Let's unpack that, because one thing every source seems to agree on, friend or foe, is his temperament. The man was intense.
Intense is a polite word for it. If you look at the psychological profile that emerges from the texts, Umar was severe. He was a physically imposing figure, tall, loud voice, and he carried a whip, the dira.
Whip.
Yeah, and some historical sources explicitly say his whip was more feared than the sword of other tyrants. This wasn't a lead by gentle persuasion kind of guy.
He was aware of this, though, wasn't he? I remember reading a prayer attributed to him right when he took power that felt surprisingly self-aware.
Yes, it's a rare moment of vulnerability. He prays, God, I am harsh, so make me gentle. He knew his nature was combustible.
Here's that story.
Oh, the anecdote where a woman comes to ask him a question. I think it was about a minor infraction, wearing perfume or something, and he just yells at her.
And she was so terrified.
The text says she was so terrified she actually urinated right there on the spot.
Wow. That is a level of intimidation that is hard to wrap your head around for a religious leader. It sounds more like a drill sergeant.
It does. But here's where the Sunni defense comes in. They frame that harshness not as cruelty, but as absolute, incorruptible justice.
The argument being he was terrifying because he had zero tolerance for corruption or sin.
Zero. Even when it came to himself or his own family.
The story of his son comes to mind. This is one of the hardest things to read in the sources, honestly.
It is tragic. His son was accused of drinking alcohol in Egypt. The governor there had already punished him, but when the son returned to Medina, Umar wasn't satisfied.
He felt the punishment was too lenient because he was the caliph's son.
Exactly. So Umar lashed him again himself.
And the son died.
The accounts vary on the timing. Some say immediately, some say a month later. But the consensus is that the son died from the illness caused or exacerbated by that beating.
And how do people read that? To a critic, that's monstrous.
It looks like excessive, almost psychotic cruelty. A father sacrificing his son to the letter of the law.
But to his supporters?
To his supporters, that is the ultimate proof of his integrity. He wouldn't bend the rules even for his own flesh and blood. And that creates this paradox. A man who is terrifyingly harsh, yet seemingly acts out of a deep sense of moral duty.
His conversion story fits that dramatic mold, too, doesn't it? He doesn't start as a seeker, he starts as an assassin.
Right. The narrative is that he was on his way to kill the Prophet Muhammad. He was literally going to end Islam before it really got started.
He was a staunch traditionalist.
Very. He saw Islam as a threat to social order, but then he stops at his sister's house, hears the Quran be recited, specifically Surah Taha, and it just breaks him.
A total spiritual collapse and reconstruction.
It is. And historically, this was a pivot point. Before Umar, Muslims were praying in secret, hiding in alleyways. After Umar converted, they prayed in public at the Kaaba. He brought a physical toughness that the early community desperately needed.
It's a great story, but do the historians buy it completely? It feels very cinematic.
It is cinematic. The Sunni narrative frames it as a miracle god answering the prophet's prayer to strengthen Islam with Umar.
Skeptics might see it differently.
Yeah, a skeptic or a secular historian might look at the timing and ask if he saw the tides turning in Mecca. But honestly, that's a bit cynical. Converting at that stage mostly brought persecution, not power. It wasn't a smart career move.
Yeah.
It was dangerous.
Speaking of power, though, once he has it, once he's the caliph, ruling an empire that's defeating the Persians and the Byzantines, he's seemingly immune to the trappings of wealth.
That is the other side of the paradox. You have the emperor of the Middle East, money flowing into Medina from conquests, and he's sleeping on a reed mat in a mud hut.
The most famous visual of this is Jerusalem.
The surrender of Jerusalem. It's an amazing story.
I love this. It's almost a comedy of errors, but in a profound way.
It is. He travels all the way from Medina with one servant and one camel. They take turns riding.
To be fair.
Right. It just so happens that when they arrive in the city gates, it's the servant's turn to ride.
So the patriarch Sophronius is waiting, decked out in golden robes, expecting a king.
And he sees Umar walking, leading the camel, wearing a shirt with 12 patches on it.
Just shocked.
Totally shocked. He reportedly whispered to his advisors that this was the fulfillment of a prophecy about the abomination of desolation. He couldn't compute that this ragged man was the conqueror. It completely disrupted the expectation of what power looks like.
So we have this austere, harsh, principled man, but then we hit the turning point. The prophet passes away, and the narrative it fractures.
This is the moment the Sunni-Shia split really begins. It starts days before the prophet actually dies, the pen and paper incident.
Often called the Calamity of Thursday.
Exactly.
Okay, let's set the scene. The prophet is on his deathbed. He's in pain. The room is full of people.
He asks for writing materials. He says, "Bring me a writing tablet so I may write for you a statement after which you will not go astray."
That is a heavy statement. He's offering final permanent guidance.
And Umar intervenes. He blocks it.
He just stops it.
He stops it. He tells the people in the room, the prophet is overcome by pain. Some translations imply he said he was speaking in delirium, and then he delivers one of his most famous lines, "The book of God is sufficient for us."
Chaos breaks out, and the prophet tells them all to leave. Nothing gets written. But why? Why would he stop the prophet from writing a will?
If you ask a Sunni scholar, they'll say Umar was protecting the prophet. He saw he was in agony and didn't want to strain him further. Plus, the Quran was finished. The religion was complete. They argue Umar was showing faith that the Quran was enough.
But the Shia perspective, that has to be vastly different.
The Shia perspective is that this was a calculated prevention. They believed the prophet was going to put it in writing, that Ali was his successor.
So by stopping the writing,
Umar effectively blocked that designation. To them, saying the book of God is sufficient was a polite way of saying, we don't need your final command regarding Ali.
And that leads directly to the meeting at Saqifa. The prophet isn't even buried yet.
No, his body is literally being washed by Ali and the immediate family. Meanwhile, a secret meeting is happening across town.
At Saqifa.
Yes. The local tribes of Medina, the Ansar, are gathering to pick their own leader. They're worried about what happens next.
And Umar hears about this.
He hears about it, grabs Abu Bakr and rushes there. He bursts into the meeting. It's tense. Swords are almost drawn.
And he argues that the leader must be from the Quraysh tribe.
To keep the peace among the Arabs, he manages to swing the room and they pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr.
But Ali isn't there.
Ali is missing. He's handling the funeral. So the Sunni view is that this was a necessary emergency measure. If Umar hadn't rushed there, the community would have fractured into tribal warfare immediately. He saved the state.
But to the Shia, the fact that Ali wasn't invited
Proves the theft. They view it as a backroom deal made a coup while the rightful heir was grieving. And this tension, this feeling of betrayal, leads us to the darkest controversy in the entire history of the split.
The incident at Fatima's house, this is the one that really makes you stop and stare at the sources because the accounts are so violent.
This is the emotional epicenter. So the context. Abu Bakr is now caliph.
Yeah.
Ali and his supporters, including Fatima, the prophet's daughter, refuse to pledge allegiance.
They're staging a passive resistance, gathering inside her house.
And Umar is sent to get them.
The Shia sources say he threatened to burn the house down.
With everyone inside, they quote him saying, "I swear by Allah That would not stop me from ordering them to burn down their home.
But the Shia narrative goes even further than that.
It does. They describe a physical assault. They say Umar forced the door open. Fatima was behind it. The door crushed her, breaking her ribs.
And she was pregnant.
Yes, with a son named Musin. Shia sources state she miscarried the child because of this trauma and died a few months later from the injuries.
And they connect this directly to that famous hadith. Fatima is part of me. Whoever angers her angers me.
Exactly. The logic being Umar hurt Fatima, therefore he hurt the Prophet, therefore he is illegitimate. It's a damning accusation.
How do Sunni sources handle this? Do they deny he went there?
They don't deny the confrontation. Most Sunni historians admit he went there, that threats were exchanged. They admit he threatened to burn the house to compel unity.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key, they argue it was verbal hyperbole, a threat to force them out, not an intent to kill. They deny the physical assault, the broken ribs, and the miscarriage entirely.
So they claim it was all just talk?
Yes, and they argue that Ali eventually pledged allegiance to maintain the community, which they claim he never would have done if Umar had killed his wife and unborn child.
It's a he said, she said of historical proportions, but with the highest possible stakes.
Exactly. And it didn't help that they also disputed over a land fadak, which the state confiscated from Fatima. So, economically and physically, the Prophet's family felt besieged by Umar's administration.
So we have the personality, the succession, and the conflict with the family. But we also have to talk about the administration. Because regardless of how he got there, Umar built the state.
He did. But even his building is controversial.
Right. We enter the realm of bid'ah, or innovation. In Islam, innovating in religious matters is generally a no-go.
But Umar wasn't afraid to change things or formalize them if he thought it helped the community. Take the Taraweeh prayers during Ramadan.
These are the nightly prayers everyone does now in mosques.
Right. In the Prophet's time, these were mostly done individually. Umar saw people praying in scattered groups and decided to organize them behind one imam.
And he famously said,
He looked at the orderly lines and said, "This is a good innovation. Nimad al-bidah hadhi."
good innovation. That phrase alone triggers a huge theological debate.
It does. Sunnis accept it. You can innovate in administration if it serves the faith. Shias reject it. They argue that changing the form of worship is unauthorized. If the Prophet didn't do it, you shouldn't either.
And then there is muta, temporary marriage, another legal battleground.
Sources on all sides indicate temporary marriage. A marriage contract for a fixed time was practiced in the Prophet's time. Umar banned it.
And the Shia view is simple.
Very. He made unlawful what the Quran made lawful. They say no caliph has the right to override the Quran.
And the Sunni defense?
They argue that the Prophet himself prohibited it later in his life, and Umar was simply enforcing that. Or that he was acting as a ruler, protecting public morality from abuse.
It seems like Umar had a tendency to centralize everything. He even banned the companions from narrating too many hadith.
He did. He was terrified that people would confuse the Prophet's sayings with the Quran, or get obsessed with stories and forget the core laws.
So he imprisoned some of them?
He even imprisoned some senior companions like Ibn Masud for narrating too much.
Imprisoning the Prophet's friends for quoting the Prophet, that is bold.
It is consistent with his personality.
Yeah.
Control, order, purity of the message. But critics argue this suppressed the narrations that were favorable to Ali and the family. It controlled the narrative.
Let's talk about the structure of the society he built, specifically the Diwan. This was the payroll system.
This changed everything. Before this, booty from war was distributed pretty equally. Umar set up a registry. If you converted early, you got paid more.
And if you were from the Prophet's tribe,
You got paid more.
so he created a class system.
Inadvertently, perhaps. He wanted to reward piety and precedence, but the result was the creation of an Arab Qurayshi aristocracy. It created massive economic inequality.
Which would have consequences.
Huge consequences.
Yeah.
This inequality eventually blew up in the face of the later caliphs and paved the way for the Umayyad dynasty, which was basically an Arab kingdom.
And what about the non-Muslims? The Pact of Umar is often cited as a model of early tolerance.
Well, we need to read the fine print in the sources. Yes, it protected their lives and property. They weren't forced to convert. But the conditions were humiliating.
Like what?
They couldn't build new churches. They had to wear distinct clothing, the Zunar belt. So everyone knew they were non-Muslims on site. They had to cut their hair in the front. They had to stand up when Muslims sat down.
That sounds less like tolerance and more like institutionalized second-class citizenship.
That's exactly what modern analysis calls it. Sunni sources view it as protection in exchange for tax. but it established a hierarchy where the Muslim Arab was at the top and everyone else, converts, non-Arabs, non-Muslims, was below.
Which brings us to the end of his life. And interestingly, it connects back to this hierarchy. He wasn't killed by a rival tribe. He was killed by a Persian.
Abu Lulu'a, or Piruz. He was a craftsman, a slave. The traditional story is a dispute over a tax on his craft. He made millstones. He felt he was being taxed too highly. Umar dismissed his complaint.
And Abu Lulu'a stabbed him while he was leading the dawn prayer.
Right, but there's a symbolic weight to this assassination, isn't there? Sunni sources usually frame it as a personal grudge or a Persian conspiracy to destroy Islam from within. But Shia sources, and some historical analysts, view it as almost inevitable karma.
The idea being,
You conquer the Persian Empire, you enslave its people, you treat non-Arabs as second class. Eventually, there is blowback.
before we close, I want to bring up the stoning verse mentioned in our notes. This detail really blew my mind regarding his authority.
This is one of the most provocative details in the sources. Umar stated that the verse of stoning for adultery was originally in the Quran.
Originally.
Yeah, he said, I fear that with the passage of time, people will say, we do not find the verse of stoning in the book of God. He claimed it was there, but it was lost or abrogated in reading.
But he enforced the punishment anyway.
Exactly. He enforced a law that was not in the written text of the Quran everyone held, based entirely on his own memory and authority. He essentially said, I know it was there, so we will do it.
That implies a level of authority that rivals the prophet himself.
It does. And it raises the final big question about Umar. Did he shape Islam more than anyone else besides the prophet?
That's the question, isn't it?
I mean, think about it. He determined how the Quran was compiled. He established the date of the Hijra calendar we use today. He created the method of prayer in Ramadan. He built the bureaucracy. He conquered the lands that make up the Islamic world today.
So, was he the second founder who solidified the state and saved it from collapse?
Or was he the man who fractured its spiritual heart by marginalizing the prophet's family and instituting a rigid class-based system?
It seems like you can't have one without the other. To accept his narrative is to be Sunni. To reject it, to see the tragedy of Fatima and the usurpation of Ali, is the very foundation of being Shia.
He is the definitive wedge. You cannot be neutral about Umar. The sources won't let you.
And that is what makes history so slippery. It changes depending on who is holding the pen.
Or the whip.
Exactly. It forces us to ask, how much of what we accept as tradition was actually the decision of one very powerful, very complex man in the 7th century? That's something worth meditating on.
Absolutely.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.